Welcome into our Car Buzz review of the 2021 Jeep Wrangler 4xe Rubicon. Now the Rubicon is one of 3 trims currently available of the 4xe drivetrain, which is a plug-in hybrid. You can also get this as a Sahara or a high altitude, but if you want to do any off-roading, of course, the Rubicon is going to be the most rugged and capable version. Now the 4xe is a plug-in hybrid, and Jeep has designated that with this blue accenting color. As you can see from the front end here, we have lots of blue accents here on the grille, including these blue tow hitches right here, these tow hooks on the bumper. They're usually red on a Rubicon model. Also, we have the Rubicon stickers on the hood with blue outlining, and we also have this really unique hood decal that, of course, says 4xe. It's spelled 4xe, but Jeep wants you to say 4xe like 4x4. Now, this is still a Rubicon, so of course we have these BF Goodrich tires, very chunky, lots of ground clearance, making this an excellent vehicle for off-roading. We've got our little Willys Jeep Easter eggs, just like we normally get. Everything is blue here, including the outline around the Jeep logo and the Wrangler Unlimited logo. That's going to be standard no matter which of the Rubicon or which of the 4xe models you get. You're always going to get the blue accenting, so hopefully you really like blue. Because we have the Rubicon, we have our trail rated badge, also with blue accenting. Above that, we have our charge door, which is different on the 4xe models. Of course, you're not going to get that on any other Wrangler. It has the letter E on it, and when you click it open, that is where you're going to do all of your charging. You just remove this little cap, which of course has the little Jeep grill on it, which is a nice little Easter egg. And the 4xe is only offered in the unlimited body style, meaning as a 4-door. We've got the soft top route, but you can get it with the hard top or the power retractable roof as well. This is the cheapest option of them all, but it's nice because you can just flick it back. This is where you're going to put in your gasoline because, of course, a plug-in hybrid also has a gasoline engine that we'll talk about a little bit later. And here in the back, the Wrangler 4xe looks mostly the same, although you do get this little 4xe badge to denote that your Wrangler is a plug-in hybrid, and again, another blue tow hook. So now that we've looked at what's different on the exterior, let's hop into the cabin to see what's changed on the 4xe model, which is not that much. We do have some blue stitching here on the Rubicon model. We've got the leather seats with the optional blue stitching. Now you can get cloth even on this Rubicon model. The leather is an optional extra. We've got more blue stitching here on the steering wheel. I happen to like it. The 4xe has these controls over here for different drive modes. You can switch from full hybrid, full electric, or an e-save mode, which is going to allow you to either not use the battery, or it will actually use the engine to charge the battery, and you can set that on the main infotainment display. Of course, those buttons are not there on a regular Wrangler. Now we're going to check out what else is different here on the 4xe model, which is going to involve starting it up. Now, when you start up the vehicle, you're really not going to hear whether or not it's on because, of course, it just uses the battery, not the engine. You're going to see that we have this very interesting gauge here that is a lot different than what you'll get on a normal Wrangler. We have sort of our battery percentages here, and of course, while you're driving along and you let off the throttle, it's going to go into that charge mode. When you go on the throttle heavily, it's going to go up into those top ranges, showing that you're using a percentage of the battery, which is kind of cool. It's a lot different than what you'll get in a normal Wrangler. Our screen here in the middle is going to show us our fuel economy, and it will actually show you how much you've driven on gasoline versus how much you've driven on electricity. And you can also view a lot of that information here. We have some very different displays than what we're going to get on a normal Wrangler here on the 4xe on this 8.4-inch Uconnect infotainment. We have this tile right here, which you don't usually get on a Jeep Wrangler. It's going to show all of your battery information, fuel economy, things like that. I've actually noted that the 4xe has not been very efficient during my time of testing. I think I've only averaged about 19 miles per gallon, but it really just depends on how much you're able to use the gasoline and the electricity. So there is a function called e-save right here, and you can toggle it between two different modes. So you can either have it charge up the battery, or you can just have it not use the electric power, because it will drain that pretty quickly. You can also activate brake regen using that button. And down here we have all of our off-road controls, which are the same as what you're going to get on a normal Wrangler Rubicon. We have our differential lockers here. We have our sway bar disconnect. We have our four-wheel drive controls, and all of this stuff does still work even when you have the car in EV mode, which is quite cool. So you don't lose any capability here over a standard Wrangler Rubicon. Now we've got the simplest of all of the roof configurations here, the soft top, which is really easy to undo. You've got a latch here on the driver's side, and then you have another one over there on the passenger side, and that's going to allow you to flick this roof open into its first position very easily. Now this does require quite a bit of leverage. It's very hard to do from the driver's seat, so you will have to get out, but it is a little bit easier to do this than the hardtop roof, because the hardtop roof requires you to undo several more latches, and then you do have to leave those panels somewhere if you can't fit them in the vehicle. So as you can see, you can fold down the roof to this first position. Removing it further than this is a little bit tricky, but if this is open enough for you, this is going to be the roof I'm recommending, because it is very easy to get it into this position. Now let's go ahead and check out the back seat of the Wrangler 4xe, which is pretty much the same as what you're going to get in a normal Wrangler. Now, you have a decent amount of legroom here on the four-door model, which is the only way to get the 4xe. You get your own climate control, you get your own USBs, and an outlet right here for charging, which is quite nice. Now, the seats themselves are pretty decently comfortable, and Jeep has packaged this in a really interesting way. If you lift up the seat bottoms here, you're going to see there is our battery for the hybrid system packaged underneath the seats, which is a really nice way to do it. The only thing that this does hinder is that these seats don't fold quite as flat as they would on a normal Wrangler model, but it really doesn't bother me too much. I think this is a pretty good way that they've packaged it, and as you can see, the seats do still fold pretty well, and we still do have a reasonable sized trunk back there. All right, so now let's get the Jeep Wrangler 4xe out on the road to see how it drives. And if you have ever driven a Jeep Wrangler JL of any kind, you're going to know exactly how this car drives. We've got the Rubicon trim level here, and pretty much in terms of steering and ride and all that good stuff, this is exactly the same as the last Rubicon I drove, which is a good thing if you like the way a Jeep feels. Very disconnected steering. We have the reciprocating ball steering instead of a rack and pinion like you get in a normal, more modern car. We've got the live front axle, you know, the solid front axle, solid rear axle. Makes it amazing at off-roading. As I showed you on the interior, all of the off-road controls from a regular Rubicon are here. You can still ford like 30 feet of water, 30 inches of water, like crazy amount of stuff. The off-road capability is unparalleled here. This is easily the most off-road capable hybrid that exists. And if you want to see, you know, more of what the Jeep Wrangler can do off-road, I have a video of that. The last time we drove a Rubicon, we off-roaded it with the diesel engine, which I thought was great. And I have some friends who have off-roaded the 4xe, and they can confirm that this vehicle does everything that the regular Rubicon will do just as easily. The extra weight doesn't really play too big of a factor, and you can do all of the off-road stuff, four-wheel low, all of that in electric mode as well. So Jeep has managed, no matter what mode you're in, hybrid, electric, whatever, you can do all of the off-road stuff really well. So let's talk about this drivetrain and what it feels like out on the road, because that's the big story here. So the Wrangler used to only have like one engine option. It was either an inline six, you know, they didn't really have too many optional engines, and now they have many optional engines. You can get the 3.6 liter Pentastar, that's the base engine. You can get a 2 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, or you can get a 3 liter turbocharged Eco Diesel. That's the last one I drove. I really liked that engine actually. Now this one uses the 2 liter 4-cylinder turbo engine. It's the same motor that you would get if you just bought the 4-cylinder Wrangler. But instead of producing like 270 horsepower, this one has the 17 kilowatt hour battery with 96 cells, and that is going to boost you up to 375 horsepower and 470 pound-feet of torque, making this the second most powerful Wrangler you can buy. So I'm going to go ahead and put it into its hybrid mode. We're going to come to a complete stop, and we're going to see what all of that works together to do. Ready? I'm going to launch it. You get an electric launch, then the engine kicks in. Woo. Oh my God, it's quick. So I don't know if it's quite as quick as Jeep says. Jeep says it'll go from 0 to 60 in 6 seconds flat. I mean, it's believable with 375 horsepower and 470 pound-feet of torque, but this is a really heavy car. It weighs well over 5,000 pounds. I think it's about 5,400 pounds. But yeah, it gets up and goes really, really quickly. Now, the other benefit, besides being really quick, is that the motor generator replaces the conventional alternator and the starter motor, so you don't need to have that crunk every time the engine starts up. It's much more smooth. You know, when you come to a stop, you don't have that like running of an engine, especially the diesel one. You just sit in silence, and your AC works and all of that, your steering works and all of that, which is really fantastic. So it is nice to have that sort of smoothness. Now I will say, so we're operating in the hybrid mode. I showed you the different modes. So I'm gonna go ahead and put my foot down, and sometimes, not all the time, you can catch the engine just kind of not ready. I'm not sure if it's engine tuning or transmission tuning, because right now as I'm coasting, the engine is gonna shut off, you know, because I don't need it. I don't need it to propel me. So it's just gonna coast on electric power alone. And sometimes you can catch the engine a little sleepy, so if you just put just a little bit of throttle down, you see you have that little power dial. So I'm running on just electricity alone, and then eventually, when I give it a little too much throttle, it's gonna deem, okay, let's start the engine up. So that time it did it smooth. I've noticed once or twice the engine kind of kicks into place, and it's a little bit jerky, but in a lot of cases, it runs quite smoothly. So your hybrid mode is gonna balance, you know, use the battery, use the engine. You can put it into full electric mode, which is what I'm about to go do now. So that's gonna save your gas. It's not gonna start the engine up at all most of the time. So right now I'm driving, I'm accelerating. It's definitely not quick in this mode, but you can keep up with traffic like just fine. It's very weird hearing all of the road noise and the ambient noise and everything from a Jeep without hearing an engine going. It's just kind of a weird feeling, but then again, there it is. I'm driving this car completely electric, and Jeep says you'll get about 22 miles. I've seen some people go a little further, some people not go quite as far. I think the Rubicon with like the chunkier tires, especially if you're doing any off-road, it might be tough to get 22 full miles out of it, but it's indicating that I have 16 miles right now with 59% of the charge. If you're going to charge this up on a household outlet and you have a 240 volt, that's like what your washer and dryer use, you can probably charge this in maybe 2.5 hours to full. And Jeep says, or the EPA says, you'll be getting 49 mpge equivalent when you're using the hybrid and the gas engines combined. It's a little bit of a weird stat because it's kind of hard to like figure out exactly what kind of like fuel economy. I don't love mpge as a calculation. Jeep says when you're running like just on the gas or with both combined, you're going to be getting 20 mpg, which is actually not great. This is one of the least efficient hybrid vehicles out there. Basically, they're using the hybrid system for power. It's smoothness, it's power. It's if you live less than 10 miles from your house, you can do your entire commute without having to fire up the gas engine, it's great. But if you're never gonna plug this in, you're really not getting so much better fuel economy than what you would get in a regular V6 or 4-cylinder Wrangler. You're really just getting this car for the extra power. So you also have an e-save mode, which is kind of interesting. I showed you that one as well, you know, so you can have it, you know, running all the time so you don't use up your electric battery. So let's just say you're going to be driving in a city later and you want to save the electricity when you're driving on the highway, put it in e-save, or you can configure e-save to charge up the battery as well, which is quite cool. So you put that and it'll actually use the gas engine to charge it up, so maybe you'll have a little bit more of a charge when you arrive where you're going. And I really like the heavy regen mode that's operated right here. You take your foot off the gas, and it's not as much as like a full EV, like a Tesla or a Mustang Mach-E, but you take your foot off of it and it'll really bring you down to a stop, and you can almost do one pedal driving, which is quite nice. So yeah, if you're in the market for a Jeep Wrangler, and you know, the 4xe is a really good option because it's the second most powerful one, but it's really not that expensive. We'll wrap that up in our final clip. But you know, the V8 one, which is, you know, Hemi V8, 475 horsepower, you're gonna get like 10 miles per gallon out of that. They say 13, but you're really gonna do 10. This gets you close to that performance, not nearly the same. The V8 is a different beast altogether. But when you find out how much this costs, you might not want to look at a V6 or a non-hybrid Jeep. So that was the Jeep Wrangler 4xe. Pricing starts for the Sahara trim level. This is a very upmarket vehicle. Remember, you can't get like a base 4xe Wrangler. Starts at just under $50,000. That's with destination included for $1,400. The Rubicon model is $53,500. The one you see here with the leather and some other nice stuff is over $61,000, and the high altitude starts at $55,625. So these are very expensive, but there is a math equation that you need to do here. Somehow Jeep has managed to qualify this for the $7,500 federal tax credit. That's the full amount that you could get on an EV vehicle. And when you factor that in, a base Rubicon is $42,800 for the unlimited model. So this is only $1,400 more expensive than that. And we're talking a base Pentastar Wrangler, not the 2.0 liter turbo, which is more expensive, not the diesel, which is a $4,000 upgrade. So when you factor in that this car has 375 horsepower, that you can use the electric motor to drive partially, so if you live close to work, you may never even have to use gas at all. This is a fantastic vehicle. It's only a small upgrade over a regular Rubicon. So much so, in fact, that I've heard stories, real stories, about people who have gone to a Jeep dealership to buy a Rubicon or a Sahara or whatever, and they've bought one of these because the lease deal or the financing or whatever is so good, they factor in that tax credit, that it barely costs more, or some cases even less, than buying a regular Wrangler. So they bought this and didn't even know that you could plug it in. They didn't even know that that area up there was a plug. So with that factored in, it's not necessarily my favorite drivetrain. I think the diesel engine is still my favorite, and I'd really like to try what this is like with a V8, but again, the fuel economy of that V8 is probably terrible. But if you're looking for just a normal Wrangler and you don't want the crazy V8, I think that this is going to be a better option for most people than the diesel. Diesel is quite expensive. I don't think a lot of people are doing crazy highway stints in their Wrangler, in which case the diesel is maybe a little bit better. But for the price, I think the Jeep Wrangler 4xe might be your best option yet. What's up, everybody? We really hope you've enjoyed this review of the Jeep Wrangler 4xe Rubicon. We have more videos just like it. If you want to look at a regular Wrangler with diesel engine, we have that. If you want to look at the Jeep Gladiator, we have that. Maybe you're more interested in the Ford Bronco. We've driven that too. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to be alerted of our latest videos. I'll see you next time.